This session is Creating Community in the World Language Classroom by Diego Ojeda. Hi, I'm your host, Jared. And in this session, Diego highlights the importance of community in your classroom and gives suggestions for how to build it starting on day one. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diego Ojeda, and today I'm going to share with you how can we create community in the world language classroom. It is important that I mention two things. The first one, I've been teaching for over 30 years. So what I'm going to be sharing today is the result of many observations throughout these 30 years. And number two, even though it would be great if you can start applying this advice from the very first day or week of school, it really doesn't matter when you decide to do it. You can change things halfway through the school year, and I'm sure your students would appreciate this. I know this by experience because there were a couple of years where I started implementing what I'm going to be sharing with you today, kind of like halfway through the school year, and it really worked. It's desirable that you will do it from the beginning of the year so you have more time to create those building blocks of community in your world language classroom. But as I said before, you can start the moment you feel you are ready to start, and especially the moment that you feel there's a need to create community in your classroom. Okay, so here we go. First is first. So the first interactions. Let's imagine the first day of school. You are waiting for a group of students you don't know. They probably know about you, but they really don't know you. So how is that first interaction? How do you greet them? Do you wait for your students seated at your desk while they enter the classroom and then wait for the right time to start the class? Or are you the teacher who feels prepared and is standing by the whiteboard or the smart board, whatever you have, waiting for the students to come, say hi from there, and start the class on time? Or are you the type of teacher who waits for the students right by the door, greeting them, saying good morning, saying hi, hello, how's it going? Or maybe also in the target language? Well, each one of these three different ways to welcome the students in the class has an important impact in the creation of community in the classroom. So you probably know that I'm going to advise that you are prepared for your class, but you wait for your students by the door right away. And not only the first day of school, every day. Just make an effort to greet them by the door. You know, this is a way to welcome them. This is a way to show them that you're ready for the class, but also to show them that you are excited to see them with a big smile. Doesn't matter if you had a bad night, you know, or you're having a bad day. They don't know that, and they really don't need to know that. They just want to have someone greeting them by the door, smiling at them, asking them how they're doing, and also in a very intentional way, making sure that they also know that they are entering your space, that your classroom is your space, and that they are welcome into your space, because pretty soon that space is going to grow from your space to our space. So, you know, it's very basic, but waiting for the students by the classroom door makes a big difference. Just make sure to do it every day. All right. So when we greet our students, we are using our voice. When we use our voice, we're using a specific intonation, and we're using our bodies as well. You know, one thing is to wait for the students by the door. Buenos dias. Good morning. How's it going? Come on in. Come on in. Okay, next. Something different to say. Good morning. Hey, how's it going? How are you doing today? Hey, what's up? Come on in. All right. Hey, what's up? How's it going? Good. See, your voice, your tone can change. Your voice, your tone, your body changes. And that is the first impression that you are giving your students. Uh, these first impressions usually stay for the remainder of the year. It doesn't matter if after deciding to be the tough teacher during the first week of school, all of a sudden you change to the nicest teacher at school. Well, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's gonna take a very long time for the students to process that change. So you wanna do this right away. Right away at the beginning of the year, right away when you're getting to know your students. Again, as I said at the beginning, it's not impossible to do it halfway through the year. But my recommendation is to do it after a break. Let's say at least after a weekend, but if possible, do it when you have had 3 or 4 or 5 days of break. Say, for example, fall break or winter break or spring break, because you know the student's brain need to reboot, and you can take advantage of that, not just for creating community in the classroom, but even for ways in ways that you teach. Okay, so remember always, voice and the tone of that voice and your body are the first step to creating community in the classroom. If you say to someone, hi, how's it going? How are they going to respond? Versus, hi, how's it going? Good morning, everyone. Buenos días. Hola, chicos. ¿Cómo están? Good morning. Come on in. Take a seat. See, you are creating community just with that. Now, the important thing is what type of community are you creating by greeting the students this way or the other way? What brings us together? Well, you know that once the classroom door is closed, every interaction that happens inside that classroom is unique, is totally independent from other classes that you might have, and totally different from whatever other classes that are going on in your school. These interactions are unique. So it is important to remember that every student is unique, every group is unique, every class is unique, and every situation that we create in the classroom is unique. Classrooms are like blank pages in a book. It really is our job to write community in those pages. So it doesn't matter if your classroom is full of decorations. Sometimes teachers spend a lot of time finding decorations and then decorating our rooms. But what happens? You know, we think that we are creating a welcoming space to our students. We think that we are giving a cultural message, putting the Machu Picchu poster or the Eiffel Tower. But in reality, when the students come to the class, they feel the same way we felt when we had our first job interview or any job interview. So what happens? You enter the principal's office and you are focused on the principal, on what he's or she's asking you, his or her gestures. You are not looking at his or her office's decoration. You are not looking at probably at his shoes. You're not looking at those external factors. You are focused. So that's what happens with our students when they enter our classroom for the first time. So I won't even worry about the decoration. I'm going to talk about decorations later. But this is one of the first steps also to create community. We are going to write the blank page of our classroom together. And we need to be very intentional about that. Okay, so what is the role of the teacher? Our role as teachers, you know, someone can say is to teach, but we are world language teachers. So in reality, our role is not to teach, because if you are aware of latest research, we honestly do not learn languages. We acquire languages. So our role is to create the best environment in order for acquisition of that language that we're trying to teach to happen. So with that in mind, it is important that every behavior and every action that we demonstrate in our classes in front of our students have a specific goal, the goal of making them feel welcome in the classroom. So our example must be honest. And when I say that that example must be honest, what I'm trying to say is that we need to try to be the same person inside of the classroom and outside of the classroom. Do not be one person when you're teaching, and one person when you're in the hallway, and one different person when you are eating lunch, and one different person when you are playing basketball with your students, and one different person when you meet them in the mall or outside of school, and a totally different person when you're at home. We must be honest. We must be ourselves. This is going to be the example that we're giving our students. See, I'm not talking about being perfect. I'm talking about being you. Because if you can be you, that creates a very important link with your students. They can think this person is an authentic person. And how do you feel around authentic people? You want to be closer to them. And if you're the teacher, probably the students want to learn from someone who's authentic. So that it's very important. So when you are authentic, when you are exemplifying who you are in front of your students, this starts bringing people together. You know, one student talks to the other. That guy is kind of cool, right? Yeah, he seems serious, but he's kind of cool. I feel okay. So little by little, you start creating that community, and every link starts, uniting. So we can be professional and we can be humans at the same time. It is our fault as teachers, usually, to create that separation between the professional and the human. And then we are surprised when at any given time we act human, and the students are surprised as well. And then we tell them, well, I'm human too. You don't have to do that. You need to start showing that you're human from day one, that you are yourself. Okay, what brings us together? I usually also talk about the teacher as an actor. And I say this because being human and having our lives outside of school, sometimes we encounter situations that are difficult, and we need to go and teach the next day at 7 in the morning, 7:30. So sometimes we don't feel, that energy. So that's when I say we need to be an actor. But remember that an actor is not someone that is trying to deceive someone. Usually actors are people who work really hard so other people can react in different ways. If he's a comedian, then people can laugh. If he's a drama actor, then people can cry, suspense, terror, whatever. But they work really hard at um, coming up with an emotion from their public. So as teachers, we can also be a little bit of an actor during those days when we feel a little down. The important thing is that because you have been yourself throughout the days, the day you have to be a little bit of an actor, students are going to probably not notice it that much, okay? So it's important to keep that in mind. Also, acting helps us with the affective filter. If we have a connection with the students and then we come to the class and tell them, oh, I had a really bad night. My daughter woke up at 3 a.m. and started puking all over the place, and I wasn't able to sleep, this and that. Okay, yeah, that's real life. Good, but uh, how do we know how some students are going to react to this? We don't know if one of our students has a family member who suffers from some kind of disease that makes them puke at night, and we are putting this as, oh, poor me, I didn't sleep well and this is what happened to me. But the students are like listening to you from this side, but from the other side they're thinking about their own situations. So it's important to try to avoid those things because you don't want those type of things coming back to you and the students telling you that they were not able to sleep because this or that happened. So it is about managing pretty well, you yourself, authentic person, but we have a profession and we have a job and we need to keep those kids, focused and moving forward. Also, what brings us together? Definitely not talking about the classroom rules and the classroom syllabus the first day or first 2 or 3 days or the first week of school. If you really need to go over class syllabus and class rules, it is my recommendation to flip them. In other words, have the students read this at the syllabus or the class rules outside of the classroom and then talk about them at a later time. All right, so the first exchanges. We want to use the first week, either the first week of school or the first week when you have decided to create community in the classroom to connect. And in order to connect, we must use L1. We cannot connect right away with the students with the second language. Just think, when obviously you're a world language teacher, so you speak more than one language, and one of those is your native language. There are two things where you always use first your native language: when you are expressing love and when you're counting, because love and money are the most, no, just kidding. Just because it's just natural. It's your brain telling you, I need to use my native language to express my emotions, okay? And to make sure I know how much I have at the bank. So use don't be afraid of using your own language, your native language, the student's native language, to connect during that first week. Other important aspect is to have a deskless classroom. Desks are like little barriers, little walls, and we don't like walls, right? So we want to make sure that we have a classroom set up where everyone is looking at each other and everyone is at the same level. And this usually only happens when students and teacher are seated in a circle just using chairs, not desks. And then talk to them, hey, how's it going, guys? How's your first day? Or how's your first day back from spring break? How are your classes going? And if it's the first class, well, how was this morning? How was coming to school? I usually try not to talk too much about their experiences during the summer or during a break, because we don't know, again, if one or two kids had a traumatic experience over the summer. So those activities of write 2 pages about your summer using the past tense are usually not appropriate when students have had, as I said before, traumatic experiences over break. And then they ask you, can we make it up? And then some teachers say, no, it has to be real. It has to be real. So let's try to avoid that. Let's focus on the first day, on the first interactions of the first day when they come back from that break. Classroom communities are not created outside of the classroom. Classroom communities are created inside of the classroom, meaning you can teach for a school that has a very strong sense of community. That's what happens to me. I work at a school here in Louisville, Kentucky, where everyone feels part of a community, and that's great. But that doesn't mean that that's going to translate into your classroom, and that the students are going to relate to you the same way that they relate to other teachers they have had in the past, or with their friends, or with parents. I have also seen, students giving a hard time to other teachers, and we are part of the same general community. And that is why dedicating time to create community within the classroom is key. So we cannot say things, oh, we are in the United States, the most powerful country in the world, so we all relate to each other pretty well because we belong to this amazing country, which is a great community. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that is my point here. All right. So why creating community in the world language classroom? Well, nature creates communities for survival. And when we create community in our world language classroom, we are making sure that we're giving the students tools to survive the school year when they are with us, but also tools for us as teachers to survive the school year. And not just to survive what happens inside of the classroom, but outside of the classroom. When the students belong to a classroom where there's community, they enjoy that outside of the classroom too, and they share that with their friends. And they might come and visit you during your prep time, and they might send you an email or a text outside of the regular classroom day, just to say hi, or just to ask a question or anything. Same for us. If we create a community in our classrooms that are kind, chances are that we might think about what we're doing at school when we're outside of the classroom. Chances are that we talk to other teachers about what's going on in our classrooms and the connections that we have with the students. So in reality, you are spreading that survival too. So it's not good just for your students and yourself, but also for the school community, because the school community, when there's a good environment in a classroom, when the teacher creates a good environment in their classes, that gets known, you know, by other people around you, by other teachers, by the administration, by parents. And that only results in support, mainly, and kindness all over. So communities put all of us at the same level. I talk about sitting with them in a circle, using just the chairs, you know, try to avoid the authority figure, you know, but we are all at the same level because we all have the same goal here in the world language classroom. But remember, before even talking about what you're gonna be teaching, these are things that need to be said and need to be clear. So when you have a group of students who feel very comfortable in the classroom with you, number one, as I said before, they feel that you're an authentic person. And number two, you feel that you are getting to know them so fast, you know, and when you get to know them fast, you start learning about their sense of humor. And something that in a regular classroom where there's no community can be seen as an interruption. Maybe in your class it's just a joke and everyone laughs and we move on. When we create community, it's also easier to talk about second language acquisition. I am originally from Colombia, and as you notice, I have an accent, strong accent, because I'm not from America. I'm from Colombia. And when you have created community in your classroom, your students will probably not make fun of your accent if you are not an English native speaker. Or if you are a native speaker, they will probably not make fun of the sounds of the language you are trying to teach, because everything comes more natural. Everything is more relaxed. Usually students who make fun of the language that they are trying to learn in front of the teacher, in the class, being the clowns, are reacting to the way they are feeling in the classroom. They are not feeling comfortable. It's not anything malicious. You know, probably they learn some things at home, but it's usually a reaction of something else. So keep that in mind. When you create community in your classroom and you are talking about other cultures, it's easier and more natural to talk about differences and things that are the same. It's not as artificial, see? Because they see you as a human being and we are seeing them as humans, not as teenagers, not as little kids, but as humans. So in order to understand and appreciate cultures, the first step is to see each one of us as a human being, as the same. Our personal experiences become the cultural aspect of the class. Even if you're not a native speaker of the language that you're teaching, you had a very important reason why you decided to become that language teacher. Maybe you went with your high school to visit a country where they speak that target language. Maybe your family comes from another country where they speak that target language. Maybe you met someone who was or is very important in your life and who has motivated you to keep getting better and better at learning your target language in the classroom. So those are things that we can share naturally with our students. And when you are acquiring a second language, there are usually moments that are funny and interesting. So share those moments with your students. You know, do not leave that part of you outside of your classroom, because that is what is connecting you to them, and that is what is creating community. And in the long term, long run, that is what is going to be helping them understanding cultural differences. We do not understand cultural differences through books, videos, posters. No, we understand cultural differences through personal experiences. I'm not upset. Now, why community? Talking about cultures, it's easy to talk about interculturality, meaning comparing things. You know, how are we the same? How are we different? In the end, we're all the same. That's what, you know, is the key when you talk about interculturality. That's what you want the students to see. Then we discovered that together that we are all human beings, that my role in the classroom goes beyond the role of the teacher. My role in the classroom is to create that bridge between cultures, between languages, and between human beings in the classroom. The classroom must be more than an academic space. And I know that some people is not gonna like this. The language classroom has to be a social space. A space kind of like a cafeteria. And I take this from Maria Acaso, an educator and writer from Spain, who says classrooms should be like a cafeteria. Why? Because cafeterias are the places where we go with our friends to chat about life, to catch up, and to have a good time. Well, if we want our students to enjoy their time in our classes, and especially in the language class, we need to create an environment that is full of compelling, interesting messages, an environment that is full of surprise, an environment where they are relaxed, and an environment where they look forward to go the next time. So the classroom as a social space. Muy bien. We create communities in the world language classroom in order to help our own communities. I mean, we do not create communities in the world language classroom so the students can behave or they become our friends. No, we need to have the larger picture in mind. We need to see our students as citizens. And the moment we're intentional about creating community in the classroom, we are also intentional about helping our larger community, helping our neighbors, helping our legislators, helping everyone in our local or large community. Because that's the way it is. You know, it's impossible to be a positive member of your large community if you have not had a community experience when you were young. Good classrooms, community are full of good potential citizens. So in some way, we are helping our future. Why community? Societies are a reflection of the type of communities the students experience at school. Think about that. Think about this history, the present of your country. I'm thinking about Colombia because I was born in Colombia, but I'm also a US citizen, so I'm thinking about both countries. Analyze a bit the situation of public schools, the situation of education in general, and how that leads to specific situations in government. We must talk about uncomfortable topics. We do not create community just to pretend that everything is great. When you have a real community, you can talk about issues that affect the larger community. And actually, it's important to talk about those things. It's important to talk about issues like racism, immigration, unemployment, health, all those things that affect in a positive or negative way our larger communities. So when you create community in your classroom, you are also giving tools to the students to create a better future for themselves as adults and as members of the larger community. Acquiring a second language is a process that has more to do with everyday life than conscious learning or knowledge. Let's forget about explicit grammar. Let's forget about intentional teaching of cultures through readings. Acquiring a second language has to do more with life. And in that sense, that makes things for us easier as teachers. So I talk about the 4-step process. So number 1, recognizing our voice in our first language, in our native language or the student's native language. They need to recognize who we are through our voice, our tone, and our gestures through their own language first. Do not impose the second language from day one. Even if you have read that you must pick the target language from day one. And this is coming from 30 years of experience where I have done different things and now I can see what works. Number 2, tie your personal experiences with your intention to teach a second language, because there's nothing more appealing and interesting and that creates more expectations than your own personal stories. And then the students' personal stories or experiences as well. That leads to second language acquisition. And also, talk to the kids about how second language acquisition works. Talk to them about TPR, TPRS, comprehensible input. You know, talk to them about how our brain works, neuroscience. You know, these kids need also to be prepared to understand how they are acquiring that language. So it's different from talking about the language. You know, when you do grammar, you're talking about the language. But when you talk to them, when you share with them how second language acquisition works, you are giving them kind of like a very clear blueprint of what's going on in their brains. And especially you're telling them that anyone can learn a second language. So this, oh, I'm not good for languages. I'm not even good at my own language. No, everyone can learn a second language. So that's the key. That's why it's important to explain these things. Okay? Muy bien. All right. So talking about creating authentic communities, the world language community is always interested in authentic resources, but keep in mind that there's nothing more authentic than each community. So it doesn't matter if you're a native or not a native speaker of the language that you're teaching. When you create community, that is your number one authentic resource. So you don't have to bring the sombreros, you don't have to bring the scale models of the monuments or anything like that in order to create something authentic. You don't need to bring the newspapers, you know, authenticity. I'm sorry, I have trouble with that word. Authenticity. Okay, I'm gonna not even say it, but authentic things come from inside, not from outside. Once you have understood and you have acquired some authentic things in the classroom, then it's easier to understand the authentic resources that come from outside. Okay, the authenticity in the world language class is given by the personal relationships that take place in the classroom, and that in the long term will allow our students to establish authentic relationships with the L2 natives. Sometimes I honestly do not understand why many people focuses so much on the authentic resource dilemma. You know, do we bring authentic texts to the classroom? Do we bring authentic paintings? Do we bring, and we kind of like forget that there's nothing more authentic than the relationships. And that once that relationship is created, then we are ready, the students are ready to connect with members of the target culture. I'll give you an example. I love my brother. My brother, Pipo, he is my friend. And sometimes, well, his name is Carlos, but I call him Pipo. Sometimes he visits me. He comes to Kentucky from Colombia and visit me. So I take him to the classroom. Obviously, my students know about my family, where I come from, and when we finally see people, they are able to connect right away with him. And I cannot even mention how many former students are still connected with people via social media. Just because we created that community in the classroom, we were able to get to know each other, create relationships that allow them to connect to other people from the target culture. And what's going to happen is that when they see someone from the target culture outside of the school, they are going to start feeling empathy. Empathy. Empathy should be one of the main goals in whatever world language classroom. So that's how authenticity happens. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. Each activity must respond to an authentic need of each classroom community. Yes, I know some of us have to follow a textbook, some of us have to follow a specific curriculum, and some of us have no idea what we're going to do the next day. My recommendation is pay close attention to what's going on in each one of your groups. If you have created community in your classroom, you're going to know your students and you are going to know what kind of activity do the following day according to your conversations. So in the past, and hopefully not many now these days, administrators ask teachers to give their lesson plans with 2 or 3 weeks in advance. World Language Classroom is a different kind of entity. is an entity that lives day by day, and you have to adjust constantly your lessons to the reality of the classroom. So remember, each activity must respond to an authentic need. It's not that, okay, today I have to do speaking, tomorrow I have to do writing, the next day listening, and the next day the other thing. You know, we cannot be that rigid. We must respond to what our community needs. We must respond to community needs. Okay, so talking about authentic activities, do icebreakers really help creating community? Do brain breaks help creating community? Well, I'm not going to say yes or no, but please keep in mind what we have been talking about. If these activities are activities that are going to help the students know each other, probably yes, they help growing community in your classroom. But if these are activities that are only competitive and sometimes don't have another goal, then we must think about our approach. The brain is a very flexible muscle, and brains usually do not ask for breaks until the day we die. Communities and classroom management. This is kind of like the last part of my presentation. Important, we do not generate community in the world language classroom just to maintain discipline or order. Why? Because most diverse, welcoming, and lively communities live by their own rules that usually are not posted. We buy into those rules because we understand the importance of maintaining order in our community. The moment we pretend to create community just to keep and maintain discipline, that's the only thing we're doing, keeping and maintaining discipline. And that's not going to take you or your students too far, not even in the second language acquisition aspect. We generate community in world language classroom to remain a community for the rest of the year and for the rest of our lives. I talk about being part of the general community, a citizen. And the best evidence of a successful classroom successful classroom management is when students can wait for the next class. See, successful classroom management is not tied to quiet rooms. It's tied to excitement and to the motivation and the students looking forward to being in your class the next day. In the world language classroom, we do not manage discipline. Remember, we manage emotions, and that makes a big difference. Classes where creating community has been a goal since the first day, students manifest more solidarity behavior, minimizing disciplinary problems. So the students think twice when they are going to act up. So it's not that we create community to manage discipline, but it helps with discipline. When they continue using the language to interact with others, that's what successful world language classroom communities show. They continue using the language to interact with others after school, outside of school, and then they come and tell you the stories, or then you hear when they are in college in real life. Now, what are unsuccessful communities in the world language classroom? When they stop in high school, after high school, learning the language or being connected to the language, that is an unsuccessful, is a you know, a sign of an unsuccessful community, or when they kind of like only minor in the target language just to have a minor there and probably get a better job, but in reality you don't see a personal connection with the language and the culture. Unsuccessful communities in the world language classroom. A successful world language program is not identified by scores, by test scores. I have known about many kids who got a 4 or a 5 in the AP exam, but then they didn't continue being involved with the language or the culture. So the best success indicator for the world language classroom is the motivation to keep going, to keep studying the language. So what is community? We have a common place, we have common things. We are different, but we are the same. The curriculum helps us connecting our experiences through second language acquisition, and every individual is respected as a different individual. That's why we cannot repeat the same curriculum over and over and over and over again. We cannot just take someone's curriculum and try to do exactly the same in our classes. That is very artificial, and that doesn't lead to community creation. That probably leads to successful lessons, but not to successful communities in the classroom. Take the advice from other people. I'm not saying do not take the advice. Other people's advice is very important, but give your own twist. Remember, at the beginning of the presentation, I talk about be yourself. Be yourself. That's the most important thing. We need an inclusive curriculum that goes beyond stereotyping. So by making sure that our curriculum is inclusive and different, we are at the same time allowing each student to feel a valued member of our classroom community. Are your students proud of their world language class? That's the goal. Communities and physical space. How should we decorate our classroom? Target language posters, rejoinders, conjugations, target vocabulary, labeling everything in the classroom. To create community in the classroom, we should decorate our classrooms the same way students decorate their own spaces. Starting with the locker. It is important that each object or image in the classroom has a personal connection with the students and with you as the teacher. I have pictures of Sophie, my beautiful daughter. Not everywhere, but at least I have 3 or 4 pictures because I have pictures of Sophie at home. So sometimes we impose, you know, that visual aspect in the classroom through the decoration, and it's important to keep always in mind the community creation. Personalized classroom decorations are aligned with comprehensible input theory as they bring comprehensible messages in a very natural way to the students. And they are starters of conversations, interesting conversations. To create community in the classroom, we should decorate our classrooms the same way we decorate our home, and allow our students to bring that kind of connection. So my classroom usually starts bare at the beginning of the year. The walls are bare. And then the more we get to know each other, there's a moment where I tell them to bring something that has a lot of meaning to them. So I remember one student brought a shoelace. I'm like, what is that? And he's like, and we were talking in the target language. He said, that is the shoelace of my soccer shoe. I made my first goal ever. And it was there, and it was a beautiful, beautiful part of the decoration in the classroom. I saw other posters that they brought, record covers, little kind of like souvenirs. I think things that were meaningful, and not that we do show and tell every day, but it does create a different environment in the classroom. To create community in the classroom, avoid displaying posters with messages like, do not speak English in this class, only Spanish in this classroom. Hey, those types of messages can be violent to the students. And it's like at home, you know, parents do not post messages all over the house telling their kids what not to do. You can talk to them, you can give the example, there are other ways. But especially if the students come from families or communities that historically have been very close to other cultures, this is going to be seen as a very violent type of message. Language is life. Our lives thrive when we are part of a supporting and warm community. Let's make our classes language communities where the second language will enhance our connections, strengthening friendship and cultural awareness. All right. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Once again, my name is Diego Ojeda. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, and I hope that you stay in touch. Here's all my information. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
And now, take action in your own classroom by welcoming students at the door each day as you begin to model world citizenship in your space. If you need more suggestions on what to do next, take a look at the next steps in our WLTS Action Guide or the WLTS Transformation Frameworks.